But she did not just institutionalize his words, his principles, so that we could only remember him, but also so we could be propelled into action, utilizing his philosophy and strategies of non-violence. It's no accident that the official dedication could not occur on August 28th, the anniversary of the I Have a Dream speech. Although fully powerful, prophetic, and passionate, and one of the most well-known speeches around this world, could it be perhaps that the dedication not taking place on the anniversary of that great speech is indicative of God wanting us to move forward to look at the rest of King? That as we survey the current events and global cries for an alleviation of poverty and economic oppression, we are being pulled from the familiar place and the comfort place of I Have a Dream to focusing on another aspect of Dr. King's life. Perhaps the postponement was a divine interruption to remind us of the King that moved us beyond the dream of racial justice to the action and work of economic justice. Perhaps God wanted to remind us that 43 years ago, when our father was taken from us, that he was in the midst of starting a poor people's campaign, where he was galvanizing poor people from all walks of life to converge on this nation's capital and stay here and occupy this place until there was change in the economic system and a better distribution of wealth. Perhaps God wanted us to move beyond the dream into action, and maybe we were unable to dedicate this monument on August 28th just because of that. And he's saying to us, it's time to readjust. In fact, over 43 years ago, he told us that we must become maladjusted to certain social ills. We should never adjust to the 1% controlling more than 40% of the wealth. We should never adjust to an unprecedented number of people being unemployed. We should never adjust to any person being without health care because they cannot afford it. We should never adjust to an increase of people moving into poverty. We should never adjust to violence of any form, bullying or being bullied. We should never adjust to policies and practices that profile people because of their color, their ethnicity, or their nation of origin. We should never adjust to a judicial system that allows us to take a life when guilt is yet in question. And so, as we dedicate this monument, I can hear my father saying that oppressed people cannot remain oppressed forever. The yearning for freedom eventually manifests itself. As we dedicate this monument, I hear my father saying, what we are seeing now all across the streets of America and the world is a freedom explosion. The deep rumbling of discontent that we hear today is the thunder of disinherited masses rising from the dungeons of oppression to the bright hills of freedom. I hear my father saying, as we protest, though, we must conduct ourselves on a higher plane of dignity and discipline. I hear my father saying, we must have a radical revolution of values and a reordering of our priorities in this nation. I hear my father saying, as we dedicate this monument, we must rapidly begin the shift from a thing-oriented society to a person-oriented society. I hear my father saying, one of the great liabilities of our history is that all too many people fail to remain awake through great periods of social change. Every society, he said, has its protectors of the status quo and its fraternities of the indifferent, who are notorious for sleeping through revolutions. But today, he said, our very survival depends on our ability to stay awake, to adjust to new ideas, to remain vigilant, and to face the challenge of change. These words, dripping with truth and conviction, as much now as they were when originally spoken, could, if we allow them, propel us into action. Action that responds to the discontent of the disinherited, conveying that we stand together in seeking a distributed inheritance for all. Action that reflects our commitment to not allowing a focus on gaining things to deter us from compassionately engaging people. Action that reverberates with a common desire for the manifestation of freedom. Action that resonates with the discontented masses, supporting social change and demonstrating that we are alert during this time of economic revolution. And so I say in closing, let us walk together, children, and not get weary. Let us work together, children, and not get weary. Let us struggle together, children, and not get weary. Let us hold on together, children, and not get weary. Let us fuss, fight, but get over it together, children, and not get weary. But most of all, we must pray together, children, or we will get weary. And one day, we'll all be able to say, free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are all free at last. God bless you.